Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Brian Benson. He's an award-winning author, TEDx speaker, coach, actor, and 4-time Ironman. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I'm very well. Yourself?
I am great, thank you. It's
That's
a pleasure
awesome
to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. Maybe before we get into all the stuff that you're doing now, let's talk about your background and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I am originally from Salem, Oregon.
Okay, very cool. You went to university. What did you take and why?
I went to Oregon State University, and to be honest with you, I ended up finishing with a work site health promotion degree.
Okay.
And I think some folks in that field might have ended up going into like setting up a wellness program in a business or something.
Okay.
But I didn't honestly know what I wanted to do the whole time I was there. I guess college for me, I mean, I'm glad I did it and I, stuck it out, but I think it was just kind of one of those things that was kind of expected that I would go do, and I just went and did it, even though I hadn't really found a direction yet.
Okay, very cool. So walk me through getting out of school and your career up until what you're doing today.
Oh my gosh. Well, what I'm doing today is completely different.
Sure.
It's been the last 10 years, but when I got out of school, I did not know what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I'm a late bloomer. So I ended up moving to Iowa City, Iowa.
Okay.
My mom and stepdad were living there, and I just wanted to try something new. And I ended up being like a manager at a health club for a year.
Very cool.
And I was really into triathlon then. And so I also helped set up a triathlon in the area that's still going today. So, I was kind of doing the healthy thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was just, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I don't know how much you want me to talk about, but the big thing was I came back and still was unsure, and I decided to go into the Peace Corps.
Okay.
And so I was going to be sent to Morocco to teach public health for a couple of years, and I had 6 months to kill, and I ended up moving to Colorado to wait that out.
Okay.
And my life changed dramatically when I met my son's mother there. And we ended up having him, and I ended up getting married, and it didn't last very long, but it was as good a situation as could be. And I did not go into the Peace Corps.
Okay.
And I have a 25-year-old son now, but I for a while there, I just did what I could, just to make that situation as good as possible. And then I ended up running. I then left and started running my family's business for 11 years.
Okay. Interesting.
Which was a golf center in Salem, Oregon. And I did that for 11 years.
Wow. Okay. So
lots happening there right out of college.
No, very cool. So walk me through how you transitioned into what you're doing now.
Sure. So I ran the business. We had like a driving range, a retail store, and a 9-hole par 3 course. And I grew up working there. It was my first job in 7th grade. I picked the balls up and all that kind of stuff. So I was running it for 11 years, and I started to feel like I was burnt out and like I'd stopped. I kind of finished growing, and I felt like there was something else inside of me that I was supposed to do. I felt like I had this gift that needed to come out, although I had no idea what it was.
Okay, interesting.
And so, so I went and had a chat with my dad and said, I really appreciate this opportunity, but I feel like I need to leave. And luckily he was understanding, and he wanted me to ultimately be happy. Yeah. Sure. And so I ended up having to stay an extra year. I was ready to hit the road right then, but we decided to sell it. Okay. And so that last year, was a we went through the process of listing it and interviewing potential buyers. And that last year was a blessing in disguise for me, though, because while I was struggling, I sat down one day and decided to come up with a handful of things that I knew would help me stay in balance during this period. And those 5 items really helped me. And every time I would struggle, I'd pull the list out of my wallet and I would read it and just kind of take a deep breath. And my intuition then was screaming, expand the list and write a book. And I'd never written anything prior to that, but I kind of honored my the little intuitive hit. And I wrote my first book in about a month and a half called Brian's List, 26 and a half easy to use ideas on how to live a fun, balanced, healthy life. So that, I really did not know what I was going to do after I left the business. And so that kind of gave me some direction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what types of stuff are on that list?
Sure. Well, my original 5 were, they're not necessarily earth-shattering, but they were very helpful for me. One was make sure that I was getting enough sleep.
Okay.
Another one is to make sure that I was drinking enough water. I think that's something that we don't really think about. And the third one was to make sure that I was getting some daily exercise. And another one was to make sure that I was allowing myself to have some alone time every day, because I'm kind of an outgoing introvert and I need to refill my cup. And then the last one was to make sure that I was allowing myself to be creative every day. And at that time in my life, playing the guitar was kind of my creative outlet.
Very cool. No, I think it's good. You kind of need to, I think the sooner you can figure out as an individual your limitations, which I don't think it needs to be in a bad sense. It's like, that you need your own space sometimes, not around people. Like that's great, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But the sooner you figure that stuff out and you learn that about yourself and can actually adopt that into your lifestyle, I think the better off you are as a human being and the happier you become.
I totally agree. And I don't think it's any accident looking back, when I left 10 years ago, that my first book was on balance, because I gained so much self-awareness just putting that book together for myself. And it's really kind of been my rock since then, because I know what throws me out of balance. I know what I need to do to stay in balance. And it's really helped me kind of develop a routine that's true to me, which has enabled me to do all this other stuff that I've done and that I'm doing.
Sure.
With that self-awareness. You're exactly right.
No, that makes sense, right? And you kind of grow on that. Once you figure out who you are, your limitations and how to work within them, and then you kind of progressively work on other things or push yourself into your comfort zone and do a handful of other things like write other books. So do you want to give us maybe a bit of overview of all the other books you've written up until, and let's talk about your most recent book?
Sure. Yeah. Let me take a little bit of a sidestep first, though.
Sure.
So when that book came out, you mentioned the stepping out of the comfort zone thing. It didn't sell a whole lot initially because I, number one, didn't know how to market it back then.
Okay.
Number one, and number two, I was terrified to speak in front of people, and so
that's why I started the show, man.
Yes,
I get it.
Congratulations. No, yes, and so. Kindred spirit. And so I knew that if I wanted to share that message, I needed to overcome that. And so I then moved back from Oregon down to the Northern California area to be near my son, who was just entering high school then, and began to, reinvent myself. And so I took community college speech classes. I did Toastmasters. I hired someone to co-host an internet radio show with me. I created an interactive workshop. I took an acting class. I did all kinds of things just to force myself to be in front of people,
sure,
to overcome that fear. And so from all those different those avenues that I used and utilized, all these other things started kind of happening, or I got intuitive hits that I needed to kind of continue to follow. The acting thing, I'd never planned on acting, but one thing led to another, and I wrote a short film and it did really well, and that led to other things, which brought me to LA. And I just kind of began to learn to happily expect the unexpected.
Interesting.
And and just kind of let everything kind of evolve. So as far as the other books, I wrote another self-help book about three years after my first one. It was called Finding Your Voice.
Okay.
And as I was continuing to learn about myself and find my voice, I kind of wanted to just share that and to try to help other people do the same thing. And then I did a couple of kids' books.
Okay. What made you want to do kids' books, just out of curiosity?
Well, yeah, right. So when I was back at the family business, I would kind of just jot down little stories little ideas that I've come up with and try to make them into rhyming children's stories. And for me, I had never planned on doing anything with them. It was more like a mental exercise, like putting a big jigsaw puzzle together. And so I had probably 10 or 12 of these things. And when I was in Reno, I met a guy who worked for a company that made children's stories into moving picture apps.
Okay.
And they liked my stories. And so I signed a contract and they took on 5. And it was really looking awesome. The artwork was great and they were just moving right along. And then they ran out of money.
Oh,
and so
that
I got shelved. And a couple of years later, I got them to release me from my contract. And I, when I was in LA here, I just, revisited looking at one of them. I said, you know what, I'm just going to freaking do this myself. And so I went on Craigslist, put a little thing out there for artists. I had like 40 people from all over the world respond. They were all really talented. Yep. And I ended up selecting a gentleman who lived here in LA, and we've done 2 of those together. We've done a few other things. He's done some other work for me, and so that was a good fit. Okay. And I self-published 2 kids' books, and so, and then my latest book is called Habits for Success, which just came out a few months ago, and that was my first publishing deal.
Okay, so what made you actually not self-publish this one? Because I've heard mixed reviews about going publisher, and I've had mixed reviews about going self-publishing.
Sure.
So what have you found with doing both?
Well, I think for me, it's a lot of work to self-publish, and I've done that 4 times. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a natural progression for me to go find a publisher and get it out there in a little different way.
Right. Yep.
And have some of the work be done for me, which was really nice. So, I think it's actually, I'm with Mango Publishing, and it's been a really good fit.
Nice.
And for me, it's almost kind of the best of both worlds, because I can still get books on my own from them at a reasonable price, and then take them and sell them at my book or not book signings, but like workshops and stuff like that. But yet they're also getting it out there in a lot of ways that I wouldn't be able to get it out there. Sure. And they've helped me, it's just climb another notch of the old credibility ladder, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And so it's been, although marketing ends up kind of falling into the laps of the authors, no matter which way you go nowadays, it's been a good experience.
No, interesting. So you mentioned the title, but what exactly is the book about, and what made you write another book?
Sure. Well, it's a culmination of the last 10 years of my life of kind of being on this journey of after I left my family business of just kind of my self-growth process.
Sure.
I guess, quote, hero's journey, that we all kind of, we can go on if we're, really open to the process of growth and such. And so for me, it's just kind of almost, when I was little, my mom she reminded me not too long ago that I used to say, why this, why that, all the time. And I was very inquisitive. And so I suppose I brought that inquisitive little child, into adulthood. And as I was going through my self-growth process, this hero's journey the last 10 years, I'd almost be in the observer's perch, paying attention of my own life and writing about it and kind of sharing in hopes that, I could be maybe a living example for other people to who want to try to be the most authentic version of themselves as well. And so this book is just a culmination of all these different things that have worked for me, that I've paid attention to. There's like 48 chapters in it. And, I feel like I captured them all in a really thought-provoking way, an entertaining way. I share a lot of stories as well as kind of, just inspiring, hopefully too, for the reader. And I felt like it was time.
No, that makes some sense. So do you want to maybe give us some habits from the book that you talk about, or a little bit of an overview of some of the stuff you cover in the book?
Of course. I'm gonna look at the table of contents because there's so many, and I forget sometimes. But well, obviously we've already talked about stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Listening to your intuition. Strive for balance. Balance was huge for me. There's another one called "It's Okay to Fail."
Sure.
And that's not always easy, but I think there's a lot of lessons in failing.
Agreed.
It helped me build character, become more empathetic. I think it can make us humble, which isn't a bad thing. It forced me to dig deeper a lot of times, to hone what I was doing. So there's many, it teaches us new ways to do things, if we're open to it. So it's okay to fail is one. Get creative. Creativity for me, I didn't really realize I had a lot of the creative gifts inside of me until I started just kind of exploring them after I left.
Sure.
And I think creativity is so important in our lives. For me, it's freed me up, and I think it's almost just one of those. It's almost like, I don't know what you are, in the religious spectrum or spirituality spectrum, but it's almost like a way for us to connect with Source. And for me, it just really, it's brought me a lot of joy. I'd almost rather not be doing anything else than really kind of being right in the middle of that creative process, whether it was, writing a short film or a poem or a book or what have you.
Sure. And I think everybody has the ability to be creative.
Oh,
right?
For sure. Yeah. That doesn't mean we're all going to be Van Goghs, but that doesn't matter as long as you're just expressing yourself.
Yeah. Or if you find peace in something, right?
Yeah.
What does it matter if you're good or bad at it? If you find peace and comfort and happiness, or you can kind of check out from the world for a bit doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have any, but I've seen there's a lot of adult coloring books out there now, it's just kind of while we're in the creative process, it's also kind of a meditative experience.
Totally.
It's a way to rest our brain.
No, very cool. So you also do some coaching. What do you coach on, and what is kind of an ideal client for you?
My ideal client is someone who's hungry to grow, who's open to the experience, who's obviously self-growth is scary a lot of times. Sure. But someone who's at least open to it and who wants to better themselves. And, that's the kind of person I really love to work with. And as far as, I'm just there to kind of, to help be an accountability partner, kind of pay attention and almost, look. Sometimes we need another set of eyes to kind of help identify things, because it's real easy, myself included, to, we have stories that we tell ourselves, and they aren't always true. More often than not, they're not. And so sometimes it takes someone, outside of that realm to kind of maybe poke a little hole in there, or say, what about this? Have you ever thought about this? Or maybe to catch someone maybe from who we repeat things, kind of get into repetitive modes. And so I like to just kind of be that accountability partner, someone who's not afraid to be honest with someone and just share and hopefully lead by example.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So you've done some TED Talks. What made you want to do a TED Talk, and what were they about?
So I did a TED Talk about 4 years ago, and that was just one of those things where one of the other chapters was called Boldly Say Yes. And so basically I had no plans of doing one, but someone called me up who I'd briefly met in Reno, who was in LA at the time, said he was curating an event, TEDx South High Pasadena or something, and he just asked, he thought I'd be a good addition, would I like to do it? And I just gulped and said yes. And so I had 3 months to get ready.
Interesting.
And and so I'm really, really proud of how it turned out. It was obviously a little bit of a scary experience. I hadn't spoken a whole lot then, and it's one of those things where how sometimes we can let fear in. This is one of those times that we know the potential impact that a TED Talk, a TEDx talk can have, and we know that other people are going to be seeing it. It's going to be filmed. And so for me, just try not to think about that too much and just try to just be grounded and share my message. And basically, I kind of shared my journey of the last 10 years, and I wove 5 points that I learned and utilized through the story. And those points were, 1 was listen to your intuition and be open to whatever comes your way. Number 2 was step out of your comfort zone. 3 was stay in life balance. 4 was have fun and enjoy the ride. And 5 is there are no rules, expect the unexpected.
Okay, interesting.
And I just kind of shared on those, and it was a good experience.
So I'm curious, you mentioned expect the unexpected a couple of times now. What does that mean to you, and how do you work with people to actually cope and deal and get through those unexpected things that come up in life, to everyone, really?
Well, for me, I guess when I say expect the unexpected, those are all kind of, there's 2 ways. Yes, we can definitely have things come up unexpectedly that aren't pleasant. But I think the more that we learn about ourselves and gain that self-awareness and can incorporate a balanced existence in our lives. I mean, balance, it's a moving target, so we're not always going to be in balance. But if we do have those unexpected times pop into our lives, if we are at least doing things, have a routine, have an awareness of what can keep us in balance, then it helps us flow through those difficult times easier.
Sure.
And so as far as the, expect the unexpected things that I'm talking about in the TEDx talk, that was more a little different jibe, in that all the things that I'm doing that are bringing me all this joy and fulfillment now, I had no idea were inside of me. I just kind of kept following my intuition and just kind of kept saying yes, even though it didn't necessarily make sense at the time. But as I look back, it all makes perfect sense. And so I guess I'm just trying to get people to be more aware of allowing in things that maybe aren't expected or aren't part of their current story that could bring them happiness instead of what they feel like that route is going to be, if that makes sense.
No, totally. Yeah, I get that. So you mentioned a short video film that you did a number of years ago. What did you do, or what was it about, and what made you actually decide to do that?
Great question. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned earlier that I was doing to step out of my comfort zone was I took an acting class.
Right.
And after it was over, after a couple of months, I didn't really think much of it. Then I had a dream come to me a few weeks after that, I swear to God. And it was about this story about this street guitarist. And it was the weirdest thing, but when I woke up, I felt like this is really important. I need to write it down. And so I did. And I met a young filmmaker a couple of weeks after that.
Like just by fluke?
Just kind of by fluke. I was doing some background, some extra work on a film that was being filmed in Reno called, what was it called? Oh God. Something Motel Life. And it had Dakota Fanning and Emile Hirsch and Stephen Dorff in it. Okay. And there was this other gentleman there, and we just started chatting while we were hanging out. And, he was a lot younger than I was, but he was a kind of videographer, photographer. And I said, hey, I have this crazy idea that came to me, and I've never made a film nor acted before, but wondered if you might want to do it together. And he said yes. And so like a week after that, we found ourselves on the streets of Reno, Nevada over the course of 4 nights making Guitar Man. And it made me feel so alive. I was a closet guitarist. I never played in front of anybody, but here I was doing it on film. And it just was a really cool experience for me. And it ended up doing well at film festivals.
Very cool.
And so that just, up until then, I kind of felt like the only way that I can potentially reach people was through books.
Okay.
But this totally blew my doors open and realized, there's so many other ways to put positive content out into the world. And so that was kind of the beginning for me, just to kind of realize I could do it in a lot of different ways, whether it was a short film or a spoken word video or, you name it. And so somebody else saw that short film, Guitar Man, and then Guy gave me the lead in their short film. And then the woman who was in that was from here and had been an actress her whole life. and we became friends, and I just felt like it was time to move here. I ended up moving into a studio attached to our house. So, I mean, it's interesting how one thing leads to another.
No, that's very cool, because you've done a bunch of other video projects, correct?
Yes. Some of my own, some with, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Prince EA and Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
But I was just in one that Jay Shetty put out a couple weeks ago that has almost 50 million views. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah, thank you. And so that's been really cool. And I've also just been on a lot of, little TV shows here and there. And I've got a small part in a show that's going to be airing pretty soon, I think here in a couple, 2 or 3 months. A show called Sangre Negra, meaning black blood in Spanish. And Eric Estrada's in it and some other people that, that we may have seen in the past.
Sure.
So, yeah. So it's been fun. And acting for me really has been a huge part of my self-growth process as well. When I first moved here, not quite 6 years ago, I studied for the first 4 years in different classes, and that really helped me kind of open up more and learn how to feel more in public. And it also taught me how to be in front of a camera, which is nice. But it's been a really good educational experience in that regard.
No, very cool. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I'm curious, though, you've mentioned it throughout the show that you've clearly pushed yourself out of your comfort zone a number of times throughout your life. What advice or motivation do you try to give to other people so they will do the same thing? Because I think, as somebody that's done it and continues to do it, it makes me very uncomfortable to do it, and I've already been doing it. So for somebody that never has done it,
yeah.
What is your advice for people to actually just get over their fears, or at least work towards getting over their fears by pushing themselves out of their comfort zone?
Well, I just think the rewards are just far outweigh the risk. I mean, there's just so much potential joy and fulfillment that can come from accomplishing something that we might not have thought that we could have done before, or opened ourselves up in new ways and expressed ourselves in new ways, and just really let out our specialness. I mean, there's so many people out there walking around that are just holding on to so much awesome stuff that could, if they were just maybe get that little nudge going forward to get the momentum going, that, they'd be a lot more happy and enjoy their life and their existence, and other people would benefit from what they had to share as well. And, as you said, it does not really, it gets a little easier just because you learn to trust that you're probably going to land okay.
Sure.
But it still doesn't necessarily make it easier. I still have fear of kind of getting doing more speaking. There's a part of me that I get a little nervous when I feel like I have to regurgitate something or retain information. I feel like I'm going to forget it and then just kind of be left standing there naked. Where I'd much rather have just questions being thrown at me, or use the energy of the room and just trust that I'm going to get what I need.
Interesting.
So that's probably held me back a little bit, but I'm stepping into it. I've got stuff coming up. I got hired to speak in Sweden in September, so I know that'll be a really great growth opportunity for me. But as far as advice, I always feel like if something feels kind of exciting and scary at the same time for me, I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, and just trust that that you're going to be okay.
Sure. So we mentioned early on in the intro that you're a 4-time Ironman. How is what you learned training and going through that experience multiple times prepared you for what you're doing today?
Well, it's interesting because I think that it has in some ways, and it really didn't have anything else to do with currently what I'm doing. But when I got into them originally, I had a knee injury, and I in college I was playing mud football. My kneecap got knocked out of place, and I had to have surgery and kind of go through that whole process that took about a year of rehabbing. And it was pretty scary because I was really active and played a lot of sports in high school and didn't know what my abilities would be after that. But a couple buddies of mine had done a short triathlon the summer before, and that kind of piqued my interest. And I thought, well, Why don't I set that as a goal?
Okay.
And so I just thought about that for a year as I got my knee strong and got into shape, and I entered, and I just had a blast. It made me feel alive. And I ended up doing 4 more races that summer, and then I did 10 more next summer. And the third year I did my first Ironman. And so it just became a lifestyle for me, and I guess I'm lucky in the fact that I have a lot of intestinal fortitude, number one, but number two, I'm a pretty disciplined person when I feel like I should be doing something.
Okay.
So, I was able to do that with triathlons, and I've also been able to do that with, the book process, because that takes a lot of work too, and a lot of discipline. So, for me, I think it was always nice just having my triathlon experience in my back pocket.
Sure.
Going forward with all this other stuff, because it just made me believe that I could do anything that I wanted if I put my mind to it.
No, I was hoping you'd give me some sort of answer like that, right? Because I think, yeah. but I think learning to stick to something and holding yourself accountable to a goal is actually really hard when there's no boss or company or whatever saying, you need to finish this by this date. But when you're doing an Ironman, you literally either show up the day of or you don't. Like, the date doesn't move if you procrastinate, right?
Exactly. So you have to, if you have to do what you have to do to get ready for it. And and for me, I'm lucky. I'm not really a procrastinator. So like, even with like talks that I have coming up,
sure,
I'm like on them way in advance. I want to go in there relaxed as possible, because I know that I'm already going to be a little nervous.
Right. Interesting.
And same with a book or whatever. I have that gene in me, I guess, that just but yes, exactly. So I don't disagree. I'm lucky that I have I'm self-driven.
No, that's very cool. So I'm curious though, for other people that are stuck and want to be chasing their passions or dreams, what advice do you give them to actually just decide to go for it one day? Because in my opinion, it sounds so stupid, but I remember reading it somewhere, and I wish I remember. It's like, anybody you idolize just decided to go for it one day. And it sounds so stupid, but you're just like, wow, yeah, they just started one day. Whatever that means, right? Like, if you want to do something, you just need to start, like, slowly even. You don't have to dive headfirst into the pool. Like, start slowly.
Well, and it's so important. Yes. And sometimes, if you have a huge goal, like, finishing an Ironman or writing a book or whatever, I mean, it can feel like, how do I get there? But you're right. You just have to start. And I think the main thing is just to keep moving forward every day, even if it's a baby step, because just as long as you have that momentum, you'll keep moving forward. And as you get further along the process, you will be shown the way. That's the one thing I want people to really believe in and trust. I mean, for me, everything that I stepped into, I really didn't see how it was going to end. I just believed that I could do it, and it felt exciting to me, and I wanted to explore that possibility. And as I stepped into it, I was shown the way as I went toward it. And so just believe that you will be shown the way. And obviously, depending on what it is that you want to do or what your dream is, surround yourself with other people that are positive and that have, that are doing it as well or have done it, and learn from them and learn what works and what doesn't work. Some of them I made mistakes along the way, and some of them were just kind of because I was stubborn, and some was because I didn't pay attention to other people and see what their mistakes were.
Yeah. And I guess you just need to cherry pick what works for them that also works for you, because the thing is, if you try all 30 things that work for them, chances are all 30 things aren't going to work for you, right? You might only find 2 or 5 or, I don't know, 10, right? Which I always kind of found interesting.
Well, right. And, it's, there's so many teachers out there, but you just got to find someone that you can relate to and that you feel, kind of as a kindred spirit, and that you feel is authentic, and then just you know, don't always take everything, you know, as how do I say this, to be necessarily your truth. You just have to experiment, move toward it, learn, see what it is, and then just let it filter into your being. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then just keep looking. The key is to be true to yourself, you know, because early on when I started writing the self-help books, I kind of felt like I knew how it was gonna be. When I was 3, I told my mom I was put here to inspire people. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. And she reminded me after I started writing books. And I think intuitively I know where it's headed. And so in some ways that was good because it kind of drove me. But in other ways it was bad because I had certain expectations. And every time I released something, I felt like it's just a thing that's going to spring me. And that led to a lot of disappointment. Sure. And instead of just really enjoying the creative process and trusting it was going to do what it was supposed to do, it messed with me a little bit. Plus, I started putting a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect and pious because here I was writing self-help books, and I lost myself for a while because I'm a pretty silly, kind of witty guy, you know, at times. And, sure. And the last couple of years, I've just been trying to just get back to me and let go of that perfectionist nature. Because it's helped me. It's helped me put out some quality stuff, but it also can get in the way. And there's that fine line. And so, you know, it's just been it's been a learning journey for sure.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And that's what I think too, is people don't realize that sometimes the people they idolize go through very highs and very lows as well in their life, right? And they don't realize that.
Yes, and you know, I think we always kind of, I don't think it's that we're necessarily afraid of working hard, but a lot of times we'll think that people just kind of, you know, the overnight success is an overnight success, and more often than not, it's like a 10-year deal.
Yep.
You know, and you just have to put the work in, and the more that you can become self-aware and solidify your foundation, the easier it will be, you know, and especially once you get there. I mean, you know, a lot of people who reach fame before they're ready for it or don't have that foundation, they just crash and burn. We see it all the time. Yeah. And so, you know, no matter what, as long as you're working on yourself, you're moving forward.
No, I 100% agree, but we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about the books, the coaching, the speaking, the videos, and everything else you're working on?
Yeah, thank you. Sure. So my website is gbrianbenson.com, Brian with an I, gbrianbenson.com. And there's a lot of videos on there and the TEDx and the books, et cetera. And then you can also go directly to Amazon for my new book, Habits for Success, at habitsforsuccessbook.com.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.